Good afternoon, nerds, and welcome. My name is Sydney Skybetter. I'm a choreographer and professor of choreography at Brown University. I just want to quickly thank and shout out to Alex and the team at Creative Cooperative City for bringing us all here together to talk about work, space, and the choreographics of our emerging digital workspaces. Now, I'm going to ask my discussants to please introduce themselves in one sentence or less. David, how about we start with you?
Absolutely. Thank you for welcoming me here. I am David Dorfman, and I have a vainly named dance company for 33 years now called David Dorfman Dance, located in New York City and co-located as company in residence at Connecticut College in New London, Connecticut, where I feel honored to be a part of this community and where I've taught. I'm going into my 17th year of teaching with 10 years chairing the department there.
Gotta say that was an amazing long form sentence punctuated by commas that were also your inhalations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Lajane.
Thank you for having me. I'm Lajane and I'm a new media artist. Working primarily with performance and motion capture technologies. And recently I started a library called the Black Movement Project, which is a motion capture library and archive, as well as a way to get people a way to make motion capture more accessible for different groups of people.
Thank you both for joining me here today. To jump right in, now each of you has done a prodigious amount of work over the span of your careers. And I wonder if you can tell me a little bit about the work that you've chosen to do versus the work that you feel like you've had to do. So maybe this is a difference between like a job and work that you've taken the form of research. But Lajane, maybe let's start with you. Would you mind talking a little bit about work that you've been compelled to do versus work that you want to do?
Sure. So I think for me, I normally don't do work that I don't want to do. It's really like it's actually, I don't know if it's a good thing actually. But I'm very, I would say that I do get very rebellious when it comes to things that I don't want to do. So I went to school at NYU Tandon for digital media. And I think it's sort of just like I just started to do the work that I was drawn to there. And from there, I realized that I didn't want a traditional tech job, but I felt like that was the only thing that was really available after like going to school in a digital media program. So then I decided to just explore my options. I ended up becoming a full-time figure skating coach because I have a background in figure skating. And I had been coaching throughout college, and then I ended up becoming a director of a skating program in Harlem. So and I wanted to do these things, but then I think for me it was all just about the experience. I had never been a manager or a director, and then all of a sudden I was put in place to be in charge of a lot of like people, and I was just like, what's happening? Exactly, I don't know. So but it was great. I mean, but then from there, when I realized that it wasn't necessarily for me, that you know that job was important, but it wasn't my job, I decided to focus on trying to create and build a space for myself where I could fit in, because I still loved digital media. I loved digital tools, and I love movement and performance. But I realized that I was going to need to like build that bridge myself. So I was drawn to doing that. And I think right now, as I work on freelance projects with other artists on their like virtual reality work, where I take on more of like a motion capture role. So I do like a lot of like motion capture freelance jobs and character animation jobs. And I mean, I love being a part of a team. And I also love I love projects. I love that projects end too. Like that it's not like, you know, it's not that I don't like the teams that I work with. It's just
Sure.
that like I also just love when things can end and I don't have to be like working on that. And then I also have I guess a career in just teaching. So like whether it's teaching figure skating or teaching STEAM, um, I normally like am drawn to more like workshops and like teaching workshops. Um, and yeah, I mean, I teach a lot at I teach a lot of like after school programs at like Pioneer Works now, which is really amazing. And yeah, and I think like everything that I do sort of uh feeds into the other areas of the things that I do. So like everything that I'm learning when I'm freelancing is helping me in my art career. Everything that I am teaching is also helping reinforce the things that I know. Um, and everything that I'm building, all of the communities that I'm a part of is helping me sort of uh, just establish all of those different sectors that I'm really interested in working in.
Great.
So yeah, I don't know. Did I answer the question?
With flying fucking colors. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. No, it physically pains me to not ask you follow-up questions. But I took some notes. I have a lot of things I'd love to return to. Thank you for your response. David, I wonder your thoughts, labors of love versus work for hire.
You know, it's funny. I think I've been lucky and in a certain sense very privileged to not do so many jobs for hire. And then again, I feel that some of the things that I've done for hire have taught me more than anything that I've done out of pure quote unquote interest. And I can explain quickly is that I kind of made up a credo a while ago, and this is not to pat myself on the back at all. It was just, I think coming out of a lack of training, I tried to go to things that scared me the most. And not always easy, and you fail that way, and then you learn, and then you perhaps thrive. So let's talk about community-based choreography or community-based workshops, community-based action. That was something that really appealed to me. I was very moved as a young kid with activism. Didn't do as much as I observed it. And then I realized that I took my dance classes more as a community student. After work, you know, I'd be working in the rags trade, selling retail after a business degree, and I'd run and tear off my business suit and put on leotards and tights at the time. I'm almost embarrassed to say that, and then don't want to see that image, and then dance, and then yeah, whatever, and then I end up loving it so much that the idea of igniting community interest through art and through movement art became this really incredible thing. From there, I went to the most abstract kind of technical, Cunningham-oriented, white kind of dancing. And I felt that I kind of got lost in the abstraction, and I realized that I like to tell stories. I like to move people. So then I went back and ended up in more community-oriented work, not knowing anything about it. Had heard the name Liz Lerman and Anna Halperin around, but I just jumped in the pool, and then I found, oh, okay, didn't do that well that first time, but maybe the next time it'll be a little better. And even to this day, if I'm have the invite to teach a community class, a class of young people, I get really nervous, even though I've done it hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of times. And at the end of it, I feel like I'm walking on air. I am so excited. I feel so honored to have been invited. So the things that I feel might be for hire, or it used to be said, oh, you know, people do community work so they can get the gigs. And I never really felt that, because I just wanted to see what it was like, because I felt it was in my particular dance heritage. And that has been really rewarding. It is kind of a balancing game, because working with unbelievably trained and articulate dancer speakers in our company and with other companies that have hired me over the time, or in plays that have gone off Broadway and Broadway, it's like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. You just give one little impetus and it's on the road. And so that is kind of a easier road, and yet the compositional intricacies and really telling a story with our bodies is so hard. So that I find, even though I can be drawn on one level to the ease of that, that has its hidden difficulties that I find I can almost get thrown just as much as like, oh, I have 40 people I've never met facing me, wanting them to give them inspiration. So I find it on the two extremes, and it makes me really happy. And the last thing I'll say is what Lajane was referencing as well. I love to teach. You know, had I not been a choreographer, dance educator, I would have been a social worker or a coach, athletic coach. You know, I just love to bring people together and facilitate an environment, and particularly where their bodies can be important and have agency and do something together. And so I love that. I'm, you know, starting a semester now. I'm very excited. I'm nervous, but very excited.
That's a perfect segue, David. You used a phrase, roughly intricacies of the body, and I want to sort of hold on to that for a moment. Now, each of the two of you, you have a different professional, technical, theoretical relationship with the body. And I wonder if you can tell me a little bit about this working relationship with the body and how that specifically relates to your creative practices. Maybe, David, let's start with you.
Sure, sure. I feel that I want all bodies as possible to be seen. So one of the beauties of community work is that there are folks that we might not think of as dance. In our dance department at Connecticut College, Heidi Henderson would always say, we don't use the term non-dancers, we say people who haven't yet danced. And so I've really adopted that, and a brilliant way to think about it. So one of the things that there's intricacies within folks that don't think of themselves as dancers, and then there's intricacies in the trained dancer, because sometimes the easefulness of moving is a wonderful technical state, and I feel it can sometimes hide expression, and it can also wear out the eye or the heart. And if too much in a given context, we're enjoying it on a certain level, but we're not getting into what a body represents, and what is inside the body. So I think that idea, like a little contact improvisation exercise where it's very, very soft and light touch, and then medium, and then really deep. It's like if we can use that metaphorically as what's inside the body and how bodies look and act, and what rights and privileges they've had over time. Those are intricacies that I love. And I always ask my students, you know, who are your favorite performers? Doesn't have to be dance. It could be anything where you're looking at a body. And how can someone's body make you want to watch them by almost not moving? Almost by being still. That's another level of intricacy aside from an unbelievable technical prowess. So that's one of the levels of intricacy that I'm trying to cultivate as a director and as a mover.
Thank you, David. So Lajane, to sort of tee you off, I'm struck by David's use of the phrase seeing all bodies, or all bodies seen. And it strikes me that your motion capture library work is a kind of thrust in that direction as well. But I'm curious your thoughts in terms of your relationship with working bodies.
I think for me, like when I think about my body, like in like the history of myself with my body, it's been very complicated. So I grew up in New Jersey in a predominantly white neighborhood. And then I also grew up figure skating, which is another predominantly white sport. And it was weird. Like, I think in so many ways, like skating, the way that I navigated skating and the skating world, in certain spaces, I felt really free on the ice. And in certain, like, I guess instances, like that was true. But then I also, within that sort of like learned embodiment, sort of also took with me a lot of trauma, just from being forced into these spaces that were consistently telling me that I wasn't ever going to be like enough. So I guess like fast forward into like my work with technology, I was able to sort of draw so many parallels with the skating world and the tech world, especially going to engineering school, where it became this next wave of people saying that you don't belong here, and like why are you even trying? And I guess like someone else would be like, there are a lot of people who are just like, oh, like, you know, that's when you just work harder, you just try harder, and you just like, you know, you just stick it to the man and you just like keep pushing. But for me, I'm just like, I was honestly just like, why would I, like, I honestly am just like, but why? You know, what am I trying to prove? Who am I trying to prove this to? And I think that question of why um, is something that really drives me now in my work, because I think like in the beginning, it is this sort of like, you know, you want to prove to people that you can make it, that you can be this like great like engineer or figure skater, despite all of the like barriers that are placed in front of you. But you know, when I ask why am I doing this, you know, I think I'm trying to figure out that answer. And then also I'm trying to sort of undo a lot of these problematic and also just like things that don't serve me in the long run, you know. So that said, um, a lot of my work with technology and with the body now has a lot to do with what does this sort of um, I'm now like, I don't have a better word, but like, what does this healing process look like? And the reason why I say I don't have a better word for this is because I'm now even realizing that healing is something that is an ongoing experience. It's not something that has an end. It's like it's a long, it's just like a process. It's a life process. Um, and when I think about healing as this sort of life process and sharing that with people and sharing and building spaces for that process to take place, um, I'm really interested in how to sort of deconstruct these spaces. So like yeah, I joined an all black figure skating company, and like what we do is we take these ancestral movements and dances and we put them onto the ice. And in a way, we are trying to first we're trying to like connect to our ancestors and to honor them in this like space that was not built for that. So in a way, like we're trying to, or we are transforming the space, which is something that I'm really interested in. Like, what does it mean to transform these spaces, and what does it mean to transform these tools as well? Um, and yeah, I started teaching this workshop called Understanding, Transforming and Preserving Movement in Digital Spaces. And what it really is about is what we do and what happens in the class is essentially we go through this process of like, you know, using motion capture, like using these character building softwares, and then like doing and creating like some worlds in Unreal Engine. But um, what we also do, which I think is the important part of this class, is we sort of navigate and we deconstruct the tools that we're using in the process. So a lot of these tools, when you open them up, you can see the developer on the screen, like based off of like, you know, where they place the buttons, you know, how they feel about bodies, especially like with character building softwares. And it's so interesting to me that, all of these softwares, all of them, all of the character building softwares, the base body is always white, is always thin, is always able-bodied, um, is always like androgynous, or like the perfect female or male body. And it's like, when I open up these projects, when I open up these softwares and I see that, why would I want to use this? And and also there's a lot of softwares too where like everything is just like boiled down to sliders. So it's like if you want a person to look more African, there's a slider for African, there's a slider for Asian, there's a slider for European, and it's just like, you can't do that. You can't, yeah, you can't do that. So we talk about this. We talk about, just this history of like society being embedded into these spaces and softwares and tools. And I think when I think about my body and in these spaces, what does it mean to like just tear it apart, tear it down, and rebuild it into something different and new?
I love the way that you're talking about like reading the interface, or like reading the technology. Historically, of course, and I'm thinking of Ruha Benjamin here, that technologies are taken as like inert, politically neutral phenomena, when of course they are literally the opposite. Though I do kind of love the idea of an interface slider for caucasity. I would put that on a t-shirt. I also want to return to this notion of healing, of trauma, and of transformation. Because it strikes me that both of your professional careers, such as I know them, have been marked by growth and change, especially pertaining to questions of race, ability, and justice. And so I wonder if, and maybe Lajane, we can start with you, if we can talk a little bit about how, over the course of the arc of your career, how your understanding of bodies has changed, and maybe how your own implication in the fields that you work in has changed as well.
My career right now is, I guess, like over the course of like 5 years. So like, I guess it's just like at the beginning, and I'm sort of just like, okay, like, and I'm really at this place of just like asking a lot more questions than I have answers for. But when I first started doing work in digital media, it didn't really hit me that like, I guess like all of these questions that I'm now like just starting to um surface, and all of these questions that are just starting to like become clear for me, they didn't it didn't really hit me until like my last year in school. Like, I started just reading all of the syllabi that like my professors were giving me, and I started looking up all of the like authors for like these articles that we had to read, and I realized like, wow, like none of these people are Black. None of these people are like, a lot of these people aren't even people of color, and these are all of the theories that I'm supposed to be learning about how technology in the world is supposed to be. And then I look around me at my classmates and I'm like, what? I'm the only Black person here. And then I'm like, and I just had a huge, just like, it was a mental breakdown. It was just like, it literally just hit me one day, and I just like broke down, and it was hard. It was really rough. Then, after school, I realized like all of my access to like the tools that I was using just got cut off. Like, it was just like really like, it was just like, oh, like, no, you have no more access. And I was just like, wow, like this sort of sucks. Like, like not being in school, like sort of sucks. This is terrible. And then it made me realize that if I'm going through this, then I can't even imagine like what other people are going through. And so what does it mean to sort of like like when I think about bodies, like I think in this instance, it's like, you know, being physically cut off from really like all of these even conversations, because you don't have like any access to the tools that you need to be able to like do the work of understanding the world that you're living in. So it's just like this world is getting built around you, and you I mean, I was feeling really helpless for a while. It's a really weird like situation, I think, because I'm also very interested in just like the other worlds that are here that aren't like visibly seen all the time. So I do a lot of like ancestor work, like talking to my ancestors, and I realized that sorry if I'm getting too like I feel like I'm getting too like
Oh, you're good. You're good.
either way, I realized that it feels like there are so many other realms than just like this physical one that like we are living in right now. And if I could remain connected and build that connection to my ancestors, to like my family, to my roots, then it's okay, you know, everything's okay. I mean, like as soon as I started doing that, honestly, like all of these uh opportunities just started like falling through the window. It was like weird, like falling from the sky, and I was just like, what? Like that's so cool. so so yeah, I mean, so now um I'm really like focused on like ways to like build that connection more. And you know, it's happening through it's weird because like this time for me has been really like an eye-opening experience of me reconnecting to home in a lot of ways, because I feel like in New York I was able to sort of just not deal with a lot of home stuff, and now I have to deal with a lot of home stuff. It's like a mixture of coping and living and thriving and like, you know, just trying to get out of this, just trying to like live in abundance.
I so appreciate your languaging around time, and thinking not just about your career in relation to its own 5-year span, but in relation to ancestry, and not just sort of past generations, but through your teaching work, future ones. And maybe this is indeed something we can return to between the two of you. I'm so interested in your both of your work as educators, and Lajana, you point to the kind of resource relationships that learning institutions or institutions of higher education have for students, and how certain kinds of learning are cut off, or certain kinds of access are cut off once certain kinds of modes of studentness end. So David, to bring it to you again, I'm curious your thoughts about your personal growth and change pertaining to race, ability, and justice over the arc of your career. How has this shifted over time?
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Sydney. And just so inspiring listening to Lajane and to you. Thanks again for the opportunity. It's amazing. I have always thought of dance and movement arts as a mode of healing. I've taken it very personally, as my mom had MS for a long time before her death, like last 20 years of her life. And I felt that my dancing quite quickly was my means of trying to get her move with just a little bit more ease. Like the more I danced and the more I had stamina and the more I never stopped, that maybe she could move just a moment. And I tell this story in this current dance of ours, A Way Out of My Body is our most current one, which has to do with body, obviously, about out-of-body experiences. I tell the story of her actually moving after seeing me dance a dance about her, and her forgetting her body. So this is like a wonderful way. It's almost like reverse embodiment. It's like she forgot her limitations of multiple sclerosis, and she heard music in the next room after the final show. This is 25 years ago, and she just takes these steps, so beautiful, until she stops, and her body remembers. She remembered as well, but her body remembered that the body wasn't supposed to be doing that. It's just a bizarre. And you know, people always say, did that really happen? And it's like, yeah, I literally saw it happen. One of the most bizarre experiences of my life. So I've been committed to figuring out how we can heal in what I might consider non-medical ways, you know, through art, just through this idea of inspirational. So how can we individually, because we're all so different, but also collectively, because we can create temporary and sometimes slightly more permanent communities through dance, how can we go to the next level and start to heal? When Lajane was saying that, you know, healing is this endless activity, I just love that. I also remember that Lajane said that, you know, when jobs are over, it's kind of good that they're over. And I think we all think that in a certain way. So it's always these endings and beginnings. You know, I'm writing songs in the basement. I'm sure they'll never see the light of day, literally and figuratively, but maybe. And my most recent one is, this is so fucking existential. It is so fucking existential. It's like this new punk, because that's what I feel this is. It's like we are so present and so focused on the present, and yet we're trying to make a new future for all of us. And so when you ask me about social justice, you know, that's what I've been committed to throughout. Sometimes the dances that we have made, and I think you've experienced some of them in the past, are so incredibly personal, but I'm hoping that everyone can relate to that and then go and make their changes. Or a dance like Underground that we did, you know, what, 15 years ago, that was about political change and that you were in on. And, you know, this idea of, I remember someone asking me in the audience in San Francisco, should I go break a window with a rock? And I said, that is completely your choice. I want everyone to figure out their point of entry into action. But it may take you a while to get there, and we have to reflect on these. So that's been really important. Two really wonderful friends and influential characters to me over the years, and it's more in like a Bilty Jones Arnie Zane tradition. Frida Rosen, who passed away sadly, and Amy Pivar, and they used to, you know, collectively work together. And they, to me, were the first where I'd heard of the term radically humanistic dance, or radical humanistic dance. And I've kind of co-opted it with reverence to them and those that they had studied with as well. And that's kind of like what I try to do. Whatever's radical for the people dancing, and maybe for the people experiencing and watching. So that's kind of what I've been committed to. And just as a kind of a last thought in regard to references, you know, we are at Connecticut College, where I said I teach, you know, really dedicating this year to you know, looking at erasures that have occurred in dance with the body, and historically, and where are there Africanist influences in dance that just kind of get swept under the rug, or the white person has gotten the credit for it? You know, how can we make as much as possible an anti-racist curriculum and sources? And so just, you know, I think it was literally yesterday, you know, putting my syllabus together, adjusting it for this class that I teach to first years called Performing Citizenship. Last time I taught it, which was last year, you know, had a lot of writers from all different cultures and a lot of Black writers. And it's like, no, all Black writers this time. You know, it's like, we don't need to hear more white voices unless it's Robin DiAngelo, you know, talking about, you know, white privilege. You know, we need to go in a different direction. We need to tear it down, as Lajane has said, and we need to go in a different direction. And it's funny, because I was thinking also about the workplace, and that even in this virtual place that we're in, that we bring our bodies to work and we perform at work. Everyone thinks performance is just on the stage. No, we perform every moment of our life. We do make those choices. We perform our lives. And so that's the thing. If we can bring that awareness to a workplace, and not that we're the gurus and we have it all, but just to figure out, to encourage in a mutual way, that your bodies are really important, that your body needs to be seen, that you don't have an invisible body, and your body's beautiful, no matter, you know, what shape and color and style, you know, and we don't need to go for norms that Lajane was talking about. And that's the way that we can make progress. You know, my little motto is movement is necessary. And I'm a movement person, but movement, political movement, change, justice is necessary.
Amen.
Amen.
So much to follow up on. I have so many questions, and I have to say though, it is kind of like the two of you are looking at the Google document with the questions that are forthcoming, because both of you are seamlessly segueing through my agenda. So thank you, and you're welcome. So, David, I'm so struck by the way that you're talking about work and labor and its different flavors right now. I'm particularly feeling this, the way of narrating, like, get to dinner. Like, how do we get to dinner? Like, through the whole day, like, we've got all this shit that we got to get to, and some of it is like causing any number of levels of existential dread, and there's like a lot happening. Like, we've got 3 or 4 simultaneous apocalypses happening presently. Like, there's a lot to do and to feel, and by the same token though, that like the ways that we do and feel are discombobulated, more discombobulated than ever, at least for myself. And so I'm very curious to talk about work and space, and how things are changing or have changed. And David, maybe we can start with you here. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about your observations in the dance field or in higher education, about how people are moving and working in real and virtual space. Like, how is the choreography of work changing for you?
Well, I'll use the term that I think is getting used a lot, and again, any term is so specific to who's saying it and who's hearing it, right? But the idea of showing up, and again, it's taken on a new meaning because we're showing up on a Zoom call, and our bodies are Zooming. They really are. I mean, I'm moving, and you're hearing me, and we're seeing it. Yes, it gets translated one-dimensionally, but we're showing up, and then there's the old school showing up, which literally are cells in the same room as other cells. And so I think that there is more of a transition now of showing up cell to cell, even though we're encouraged, and it really is the safest thing to not touch those other cells yet, which is torture for a person that relies on interdependence of body weight. But I do think that there's, cheers, but I do think that there's the notion of presence and interface that is seen both digitally and then in real life, that is very similar to the way it's been, in that you have to show up to do work. You have to. The things that I think are a little bit different is that in this time of different kind, like you're saying, apocalypse now, and then tomorrow, and then tomorrow, and then tomorrow, that we are trying to show up differently. We are trying to figure out how to not be habitual in the way that we present or represent and perform ourselves and our bodies. So, like, one example in our dance world, and again, this sounds like patting on the back, but I'm just hoping that we can do justice to it, to use that term on purpose, and that if it has any inspiration. But let's take an example that's inspired by Lajeunet's speaking. When in dance we talk about technique class, in a more privileged white world, that gets known as modern dance. Okay, or even ballet technique, right? But every dance has a technique. Of course, Africanist dance, Afro-Caribbean, West African, and many, many forms. And then improvisation. From the outside world, people think that improvisation, whether it's stand-up comic improvisation or movement improvisation, well, they're just people that kind of ad-lib well. Well, no, you build a technique, and it brings us to the word that was mentioned earlier, a practice. You need to practice. So when we're welcoming our dance interested students now, we are inviting them into a class that is a patchwork, a quilt, a lovely quilt of all techniques that we offer. But it used to be that it was ballet twice a week and modern 3 times a week. That's what white college dance departments did and still do. And so we're trying to shift that, but you can't shift it unless you shift it. So I think that that's the idea. It's like, how can we change? So that's one thing. And then the other thing that I was reflecting upon is that we are having a bit more sequestered time. It's there is, a reason that people are staying in their homes. And Lajeunet was talking about, this idea of getting close to your home again. What can we learn from these times, people have been reading more. People have been forced to knowledge. I hate to say this, but we change when we have to. I was thinking of Frida Rosen again, the late Frida Rosen again. Sadly, we change when we have to. Sadly. But I think that different resources are more available. People have had more time to dig into those resources. So now our work can potentially be more informed, whether it's virtually or complete body and body in the same space. So I'm looking forward to it. There's so many challenges at any given day. You just want those challenges to go away. But on that other given day, which hopefully is more days, you say, oh my gosh, we have this opportunity to make a new world.
Amen. Sorry, he's like, um, I'm struck by how both of you are talking about change and transformation, and how that is moving me in a very real and unpretentious way. Like, I'm not saying, oh, I feel moved. Like, I'm feeling that. Like, the aspirational quality of your discourse, and like what you're describing in terms of like work and labor. Like, it feels like it's anything but dry. It's incredibly meaningful and heartfelt. So Lajane, to segue to you, I'm struck, maybe by way of segue, David just said something about a presence in interface, and how our presence is, our physical presence is variously sort of mediated, but also very physically taxing. Like, showing up is work, like Zoom fatigue is real. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how the choreography of your work and the work of those who you work with has changed over the last couple of months, and maybe where it's going.
Yeah, so right now I'm working on a new, like, on like some new like movement projects. And it's been weird because we have to work over Zoom. So I guess what we try to do is, or what we're trying to do is learn how to hold space for each other while we're so far away. And we're trying to find ways to build connections, like, and I think from there, so a little context, like, we both have standalone motion capture suits. So we're also like recording our movements while we're trying to do this. So it's like a lot of different programs sort of working at once. And then from there, we'll be creating animations where both of our bodies are in digital space together. So it's like it's like basically it's weird because I guess it's also like a thing with time too, because even though we're not together right then and there, we are doing the work to be able to bring our digital selves to a space together. And then we're also trying to imagine what that space can be, and how we can build out that space. I think also I've been thinking about just in like some work that I'm doing now. So it's so weird. Like, um, I actually I have a really weird like relationship with performance, with me being the performer actually. So it's like normally I'm okay with working with performers, but this last like year and a half has sort of like pushed me into like performing myself, which has been really like, it's been a little stressful honestly, because it's like, yeah, like, you can do this work with other people, but you need to do it with yourself as well. So I've been doing a lot of different like movement exercises just on my own. And I've been thinking about like what type of work I can make with that. So I've been like in the process of building these, of creating these movement portraits, is what I'm calling them. And essentially what they are is like these recordings of motion capture data, like applied to characters that I create for like these different performers, and then basically just showing their movements like as a portrait, so you're learning more about the performer as you watch it. So yeah, so basically each performer performs to these interviews about their movement journeys and movement practices. And then when I go back to the process of actually like doing the animations, I like listen over and over again to the interviews, and then I create these visuals based off of those interviews as well. So it's like me having this um, what was once like this face-to-face connection through the interview now becomes this like recorded and more intimate relationship through me just listening to recordings and creating art based off of that. So yeah, I think it's like, for me, it's like an archival like process of like what it means to sort of interact with these archives that I'm building myself, and what it means to go back to those archives and then create visuals and build visual experiences based off of that. And it takes a long time. So I didn't expect it to take so long, but like this first, I did like a live motion capture performance last April, and I'm just now like finishing the first like 10-minute animation piece, that the next thing that would be like for that would be a virtual reality experience. But yeah, I think for me right now, I've been so interested in so many different media forms that like um looking at and diving into and just digesting like all different forms of media has been very just it's like a part of like how I learn. So um yeah.
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 Yeah. You're like, so like, you're like string of kick-ass things. And yeah. Uh, so many follow-ups here. I'm struck by how your well, two things. First, how you're thinking about data as expressive, body data as being expressive, and that seems like something that I want to return to between the two of you. But I'm also really intrigued by your work trying to create non-Zoom ways for digital presence, digital co-presence, right? So thinking of ways that we can be together, admittedly through a digital kind of crucible, but presumably in a way that's more meaningful and evocative and provocative than like this hegemonic rectangular kludge of this Zoom box that we're talking to. I mean that with respect, Zoom, but we can do better. And so maybe, and this is my a segue to my last question. I'm really interested in, and Lajane, maybe I can start with you here. What agency do you think folks have right now to affect positive change amidst all these questions of labor, of increasing prevalence in technology and mediation in our lives? Like each of you has a practice that is predicated on performing certain kinds of interventions with technology, with bodies, with dance, with choreography. And so I'm curious to sort of broaden the frame a little bit. What agency do you think folks have right now to affect positive change? Lajane.
It's weird. Like I think that um I was a part of this sort of Zoom meeting earlier today, and someone said that um basically that scarcity is a myth, and that we are always in abundance. And I feel, and when she said that, I was just like, yes, like I think that um we do go through our lives like being fed that we can't really do that there's only a particular way that you can enact change, and it's only if you go through these portals or like these if you follow these rules. But the truth is that honestly you're going to have to break some rules to get it done. And I think that once we release fear, it's really like it's a self thing, it's a lot of like, it's a self thing, it's a communal thing. I think that once we release that fear, like that like just like inner fear of believing that we can't change, or like believing that we have to be content or okay with how things are going. I think that it's so hard because, you know, we're living in this capitalist society, and, you know, it's so hard to find ways outside of it, and to find alternatives to that. And so with that said, and also it's hard to like, like, so now I'm gonna go down like a story lane because like I just have to like tell my story now because so like after school I also was just like really broke. So like I was also just like, you know, like, well, what am I gonna do for work? And that's sort of like that's what got me into just like coaching full time. But even after that, like I left that job before I even had anything like set. So it was just like a leap of faith. And it's like something that you like, I wouldn't like, so the thing is like, you know, I recommend people do that, but I also don't recommend that people do that. So it's like, because like, it's like really weird because like, I knew in my heart and in my gut that I had to leave a situation. But I also didn't have any other like known or seen opportunity. So it got me into some trouble. Like I was broke and I was like, what am I gonna do? Like I was like freaking out. And I guess like just I was just sitting in like, you know, not having anything, you know? And like I was like hopping turnstiles, like, you know, it got real, you know. So I was just like I was hopping the turnstile, you know, I was trying to get places. I was like, you know, I like had reached like a low, but I still knew that it was the right decision, which was so weird. Like it was just like, you know, like I have nothing right now, but I still know that I made the right choice in leaving. And yeah, like when I like went through like that summer of like just like really just like tough times, I think that that's also when I started doing like the ancestor work, and when I started to like, you know, just really try to reconnect and connect to like these other spaces where I knew abundance was available. And with that said, I feel like we all have agency, you know, we all have choices that can be made. And those choices are hard. It's not like this easy thing, like, oh, I'm just gonna like, you know, like easily make this choice. And it's just hard work. It's not easy. And I think that for a lot of people, like going down that path of just saying, you know, like I'm gonna do me, like, you know, forget everything, like forget everyone else, like I'm gonna just do me. Like that choice is just like it don't make no sense. Like it just like honestly it just doesn't make sense. Like sometimes I'm thinking about my choices and I'm just like, wow, like, you know, that was ballsy. Like like I really did, like I did that. But you know, um I don't think people are going to do that. Like I don't know if everyone's like going to do that, but I feel like it's possible, and I feel like you have a choice.
Yeah, no, I love this because you're articulating beautifully this tension between like facing a uniquely American precarity and this equally American sort of mythology of like, you can do it, just break the ceiling and keep striving and trying and go west, young person. And like, and there's both of these things are happening right now, and the combination of the two is really confusing physically, emotionally, mentally. But what I'm hearing from you is that by facing the precarity, by working towards abundance, you can affect change, as opposed to like believing in the kind of mythology of everything's going to be okay if you try really, really, really hard. Um, so then, David, to tee it off for you, I'm curious what kinds of agency or agencies you're seeing these days to affect positive change.
I feel similar to Lajane, the idea of releasing fear, I think is just so important. And the idea of dreaming. So I feel that if we can offer up works of art that can invite folks to dream, change, and agency, then it can happen. You know, I'm a bumper sticker guy. I don't really have them on my car, but I think about them all the time as the way, you know, it's like, and one longish, awkward one is everything I learned from art. And it's like, you know, I sometimes just don't know. I don't know if like a movie's more real than the real story, or if what I read in the paper is real because I read it in the paper. And if I literally wasn't there with my cells or captured on camera, even if on camera, there's another view on camera. You know, here's a view and here's a view. I don't know which one is the real view. So this whole idea, again, going back to existential thought, like I don't really know what is real. And just, you know, being broke, just stopping, you know, that idea of how we can magically, precariously, to use your term as well, Sydney, adjust to our circumstances is if I look back at somewhat near Lajane's age and how I'm assuming, sorry, is but how I survived on the amount of income that was coming my way, you know, it's like, oh my gosh. And then now I have a professorial job and an income and some insurance and all that, which I'm very, very thankful for, to have a job. And yet I almost feel the same thing. I feel that, okay, I still have to watch out. I still have to make sure that I can provide for my 19-year-old, our 19-year-old, and the health of Lisa's mom, and, you know, just all those things. Some things don't change. We're also essentially generous and greedy at the same time. And so how do we use, you know, the much overused but really necessary word of agency? How do we create the idea of folks going for their dreams, even if it isn't the freaking American dream that we're socialized to want and to accept? So that's, I think, the art part where I get really excited. What new dreams can we dream? And how do we either attain them or make actions that go in that direction? How do we bring people to a screen, have it be embodied, and have it, in our case, outdoors, in rooms, in living rooms, superheroes in living rooms, figuring out how they're going to save the world each in their own fashion, and dreaming of that day when they can touch someone's skin again. And so it's kind of a different flip on the notion of technology. So it's like, how can we use the resources that are right in front of us or have not been seen yet to this moment to encourage dreams that have not yet been dreamt? That's kind of where I feel that's my job now. Yeah.
It was me dropping a virtual microphone that is also my computer, I guess. That gesture in this context makes very little sense. And on that note, we are out of time. Lajane, David, thank you so much for your time. My name is Sydney Skybetter. Good night and good luck.